Hey everybody, welcome back to Work Tech. It's George LaRocque, and I'm excited today because I've got a story to tell the market that is probably one of the biggest kept secrets in the market. There was a merger that happened at the end of 2022. VensureHR, payroll and PEO provider, announced the acquisition of namely a middle market HRIS and payroll provider. And also at the same time, a merger was announced between Vensure and PrismHR, the leading tech platform, sort of back office for PEOs. We all knew about that, but I don't think any of us really understood the breadth of services that this new entity was already bringing to the market, and now the opportunity that they have to extend that. So that's a lot to follow already, and I've got the best two people here to help us understand the strategy and what this all means to the market. I'm joined by Alex Campos, the CEO of VensureHR, and Gary Noke, the CEO of PrismHR. Welcome, Alex and Gary.
Thank you, George.
It's
nice to be with you.
I'm really excited to dig in here. So let's start with quick introductions. Alex, I'll start with you, if you wouldn't mind, telling everybody a little bit about yourself and VensureHR.
Thank you again. I really appreciate the opportunity. So yeah, my name is Alex Campos. I'm the CEO of Venture Employer Services, and kind of I call it the tall building elevator pitch for Venture. In 2004, Venture was formed. In 2008, I invested in Venture. Fast forward after that, in 2017, I did a transaction with Solar Capital, where I sold 50% of my stake to private equity. And then fast forward in 2021, I did a transaction with Stone Point Capital, which is our sponsor today. And, over the last 5.5 years, we have done roughly just under 60 transactions, and 90% of those transactions are payroll and PEO transactions that we have acquired and we've done transactions with. And what we do is, we leave their brands in place. We do not rebrand them. We obviously put a venture company below it, but the general idea is that these businesses are local businesses that provide local services to these small SMBs. We do consolidate those payroll companies as those PEOs back offices into one cohesive back office, but we have a decentralized sales and marketing approach. And we think that provides the most benefit to our clients. It respects the local nature of their relationship with their providers, but it allows them to have national strength, right? So we have all the bells and whistles that you can imagine from any of the big boys, right? Whether it be healthcare or workers' comp or technology. So, that's kind of the venture story in like I said, the tall elevator building.
Yeah. So how would you frame, and I haven't forgotten, Gary, I'm going to come to you for your intro in a second, but what's the best way to give everyone the sense of, whether it's how many customers or how much payroll you're running, or, the scope of the organization?
Yeah. So on a direct basis, where we're dealing with the direct SMB, they're our clients and not through another provider. We're just under, I would say, 900,000 WSE. So we're one of the largest, obviously, out there. And it's roughly, I would say, we process just under $30 billion worth of payroll. And that's up from 2017. It was less than 50,000 WSEs and less than $1 billion in payroll. So a lot of growth over the last 5.5 years. And it's been obviously generated through M&A, but also organic growth. We have very, very strong organic growth.
Yeah, that's great. That's I think everybody now gets the biggest story that no one heard of, right? So Gary, tell everyone about Prism and yourself, please.
Oh, well, thanks, George. And we appreciate the opportunity to talk. Actually, George and I both years ago came from what we call Bullhorn. And so very small world in HR, and we're all together. So I actually joined FW Davison at the time, a little over 10 years ago. When I got there, I was employee number 28. But we quickly started growing. I became the CEO about a year and a half later. Brought in private equity, made a couple of other transactions since then. But in the last 10 years, we've grown from 28 employees to currently about 800 employees. I went to Stone Point Capital in 2019 at the very end of the year. And then I quickly introduced them to both Bullhorn and Vensure, two great friends of mine. Now, what Prism does is we are the largest player in PEO software on the market. We've got about a 50% market share, and we continue to grow. I saw Alex very effectively growing his business and acquiring many Prism customers. So Alex and I spoke about 5 years ago, and I said, at some point we may come closer together. And lo and behold, here we are. But it's a really exciting opportunity to work together. We've got, we think it's a positive flywheel of opportunity, because as we do more and more with Vensure, it makes our product better, and that serves all of our other PEO customers extremely well.
Yeah. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And Prism is probably the company that I knew most about, just given, understanding the growth in the PEO market. And then at talking to PEOs, PrismHR comes up as the back office when it can. So how does Namely fit into this? I think we can understand fueling PEOs being sort of the platform under the hood. We understand, the go-to-market with Vensure. Namely, as a middle market HRIS, is that and payroll provider, is that the growth path out of PEO, or where does it fit?
I think probably both Alex and I can answer it. I'll jump just on sort of the one part of the business side, but then Alex can bring it home with his customer base. What we started noticing a few years ago was PEOs would, quote unquote, graduate their customers depending on the size and complexity. Sometimes it was at 70 or 80 people, sometimes it was at 300 people, but they'd be leaving our ecosystem. And we saw this across many of our customers. And Namely actually had a program called PEO graduation.
That's right.
And so I thought, wouldn't that be interesting to own? Also, as we were building our business, it was interesting. We were very, very strong on the under 75, say, in the PEO. And we also had a good cohort of business through one of our customers called ePay that we eventually acquired. And that was sort of serving customers, say, 200-300 up to 10,000. And that was all running on the Prism platform. But we weren't particularly strong in sort of the 75 to 500. That's where Namely was strong. So from a technology standpoint, from an expansion into non-PEO business, and from a hedge from losing PEO from the ecosystem into an HCM ecosystem, it was a great fit. And so I started pursuing them 2 years ago, and we actually, worked very hard all summer long and finally came together towards the end of the summer. Now I'll sort of flip it over to Alex, who could talk a little bit more about how he looks at it from, customers moving, because Alex has got, thousands, 15,000 customers perhaps.
Yeah. So from our vantage point, obviously, everybody knows Prism pretty well, is the #1 PEO platform, technology platform out there, right? By far. But there were some gaps there on the HCM side, right? So as clients, when we talk about graduation, I've always said, look, guys, they're not necessarily graduating away from our service. They're graduating away from our technology, right? Because we had the Prism technology and it was very PEO friendly, but not so much on the HCM side. So with the Namely addition to the family, it really covers that gap, right? So our strategy is that, hey, look, if you need to graduate, you're really staying you're staying in the same building. You're just going to another classroom, right? So you're graduating to this technology. And from our vantage point, we see ourselves as an end-to-end provider of the entire life cycle of a business, right? Whether it's a small business, which is 1 or 2 people, or 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, it doesn't matter, right? Technology is what really matters in that area. Obviously, each tech comes with different business models, right? So they're really graduating into a new technology, and this really closed the gap for us completely. And now we're just deploying that strategy and going out there to the marketplace to make sure that we can fit the needs of our clients.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes really good sense. I think, I know that every HCM provider is providing service around payroll, regardless of the size of the customer. When you start looking at the enterprise market or the larger, middle market, and this, gets them out of that sort of PEO business model, and the costs associated with that, and you get to stay with them for that journey. That makes good sense. So the structure of the businesses. I know that Alex, in your business, everybody's operating on, the brands are operating independently, and it makes good sense. You're centralizing on the back end. Tell me about these three brands. It sounds like continuing to operate independently. Am I reading that right?
Yeah. We think of ourselves as three business units. We have our direct business unit, which is the traditional venture, PEO, HCM business that we are directly dealing with the SMB. We have another area, which is our BPaaS, our business process as a service. We have another division that does that. And then, of course, we have our tech division, which is on the Prism side. And those three business units operate independently of each other, but they operate under a common holding company, which is Vensure Employer Solutions. But it provides for the different silos because, they're different businesses. So we think of Namely, Namely is kind of a little bit of an anomaly because, Namely had both direct business, right? They had close to 200,000 WSEs, and they also had technology, right? So we see Namely really fit into both business silos, business units, both on the direct side of Vensure and on the technology side that we're offering to the Prism clients on the Prism side.
Yeah. So it sounds like, Gary, it would be fair to say that, you're fueling PEOs in the market, and your platform may be fueling the Vensure PEOs, but it's not a consolidation of across those, right? It's the consolidations over on the Vensure side, operations and so forth.
Yeah, the providers would consolidate on the Vensure side. What we're doing is we have a variety of technologies, and we're investing in all of them. And what we're doing is we're taking sort of an API or web services approach. So the customer may have be on a co-employment engine, which PEO, or they may be on a non-co-employment engine, which would be Namely, but we're giving common services. So we're going to continue to invest in the platforms, but not just Vensure, but all of our customers should be able to serve an SMB throughout its life cycle of growth, should they have that life cycle of growth. And the idea is there'll be common components, like applicant tracking could be common across all, performance management, time and labor, reporting, which is very important. The things that the customer touches, their customer, the SMB, that shouldn't have to change when they move between business models. So the heavy lifting would be in the back end. So we are consolidating all the technologies into a common ecosystem with a user interface layer that's simple and consistent across all the technologies.
That's great. Okay. So, all right. So that we've unpacked I'm sure there are more complexities, but we'll stop there for now. We sort of understand the business, the value. What was happening in the market, trend wise or in general that brought this deal together at the end of last year? What were what did that look like for you?
I think from my perspective, and I'll let Gary cover his, I think Vensure had grown to a level and since probably the last 15 years, we have been building technology around the Prism core technology, right? So Prism has been our core technology for over 15 years, but we built a lot of ancillary technology around that because we wanted to distinguish ourselves like any other company would want to do. But what we were lacking was our own tech platform, right? We were the only large player in the industry that lacked its own tech platform. And that, I call it my Achilles heel. I felt that was something that, we needed to address. So that's how I viewed it. I'll let Gary cover how he viewed it from his perspective, why this transaction made sense, but that's my vantage point. And obviously it was the leader in our space when it came to tech.
Yeah, to be fair, what we're trying to cover here in just a few minutes, we probably spent, 30 hours explaining to our private equity partners the industrial logic of it. But as I mentioned about 5 years ago, I started talking about this with Alex. The way I looked at it is, in our world, interestingly, software is usually an extremely profitable world. But in our world, the companies that have been most successful are those that have both the technology and a direct services business. we had the tech, but not the direct. And as Alex mentioned, they would the opposite. When you put them together, it becomes a virtuous cycle. So what happens now is we look like a lot of these other companies. We have the financial resources now to invest even more aggressively than we have in the past. And it also served to solve one of my other problems, which was consolidation. We've had over a third of our clients acquired, and of those a third that were acquired, 40% or so were acquired by one company, Vensure, and the rest were acquired by different partners. So industry consolidation in the PEO world was definitely a challenge. And I think, so this solved my two biggest issues, which was more margin and consolidation. And as Alex mentioned, it solved him being adrift, perhaps without technology. So it all came together. And as I said, it's a virtuous cycle because now we're bringing product in a more enhanced way that not just Vensure, but every other Prism customer benefits from. So it's rare when you get a virtuous cycle like this. We're really excited about that.
Yeah. You've answered so many of my questions that, speaking to, what brought you to Namely, the timing of this, sort of how you'll operate and go to market. I'm curious though, I like to think about the different constituencies, right? And one of them is the customers. I'd like to pause on that for a second. What kind of impact do you see for each of the customers? If this merger happens, what's the impact to each of your customer bases?
So let me start off with two views, and Alex might want to dive deeper on one view. I look at two customers. First, my direct customer, which is the PEO or the ASO. And the good news was I'm not saying this didn't create some anxiety. Of course it did, because people wondered. But this model has been successful by other companies, and we're too going to make it successful. But it solved the problem for my customer because I was not able to, and any of them would tell you, we didn't have good enough UI UX, for example. That was an area that Prism was a little bit, maybe more than a little bit behind. We've been talking about coming to market with a good HCM product for years, actually. Sometimes we didn't have the resources or the people or the focus. So this transaction actually enabled me to dramatically accelerate the delivery of the look, feel, experience, and technology models that my customers wanted. And we could have it a unified experience. Now, we're not complete with that unification. It's only been a few months, but we're really making huge strides to that. Then from the other lens, from a customer, and I'm not speaking specifically about any customer, but most small businesses that start and come to PEO, whether they're 2 employees, 5, 10, 20, I don't know the exact number, I'm making it up, but somewhere well north of 99% of those startup customers never get beyond 2,000 employees. I don't know the exact number, but it's probably 99.5%. Well, it's difficult if you grow out of a particular provider and you have to change your technology stack, retrain your employees, train them on new applicant tracking, new reporting, new this, new that. It's a nuisance. So what we brought to the customers, you said something earlier, we're letting the form follow the function. The function was to make sure that the customers, PEOs, my PEO direct clients, got all the privacy they needed, and their customers got to move between models relatively frictionless. Right? And that's really important. When they move between a co-employment to a non-co-employment model or to an EOR model, they can keep on the same technology stack, and what little work needs to be done is behind the scenes by us. So that's really how I looked at it. Alex might look at it slightly different for the direct Vensure customer.
Yeah, no, I think it's very similar, from a Vensure's customer point of view. So let's suppose we had a 50 WSC client who eventually, using the same lingo, wants to graduate off of the Prism technology onto, let's say, the Namely technology, right? Where now we're building tools that graduation can be seamless. First of all, that the UI UX for both look the same. So you're not having to relearn where things are on the page. That's number one. So that's super important. Number two, for purposes like for us who are a service provider and we have to jump back and forth between both platforms, single sign-on capability that makes it simple. And number three, migration utilities. Utilities that allow us to move a client bidirectionally based on their needs and technology as it changes over the life cycle of the business, right? So, started out as a PEO client, grew to the point where he says, you know what? I really want to become an ASO client, and I want to use my own tax ID for whatever reasons, and I don't need you to provide me healthcare anymore. Okay, fine. We have a solution for that. It's like, we have an app for that. We have a solution for that. And we can migrate that client over to the HCM platform. And it's not like an act of Congress to do it, right? You don't have to start implementation from scratch. We're building those kinds of utilities and technologies and bridging that will make us the end-to-end provider for the industry.
Yeah, you both made some really key points. Those transition points that your customers go through, the end customer goes through. Yeah, I've got a HR community it's about 13,000 people in it, and it's constantly, we're moving from a PEO, or we're going from 50 employees to 100 employees, or we're going to grow to 300 employees, and it's always, this doesn't work for us anymore. What will work? And though, if you can provide a path and starting with what they know and keep a service level there, that's huge. The other thing, listening to you talk about the back office side of it, another constituency I try to talk about is your employees. I would imagine the employees across the board here in all three companies are pretty excited about what this looks like moving forward. I'm just picturing the example you gave, Alex, of going, they have to keep it straight, like between screens, and never mind that customer's, environment.
Absolutely. And one of the things Vensure specialized in throughout its whole entire life cycle is contingent labor force, right? We've been a staffing centric PEO forever. And now even more, this is more important. We have technology that lets you do daily pay, lets you work with a contingency workforce that most of our competitors don't even have any kind of platform in order to handle.
Yeah. And I was on a call earlier today all about the extended workforce. And I mean, in this market, we've never seen the labor market, at least currently, so disconnected from the economy, and the skills shortage, everything else happening in the world, having the ability to have a total workforce perspective. It's just as relevant to this. 10 years ago, we wouldn't have talked about SMB businesses and the extended workforce, but today all these things are just as relevant for them as it is to the 50,000 person, large enterprise. So tell me about the future. Like, what are the plans? What are the things that you're thinking about for this new entity as you march forward in the market? It's a big open-ended question. You can do whatever you want with it.
It is open-ended, but we're okay with that.
All right.
So I would say, look, we have a lot of options, right? Our company is not just tremendously large and grown on the top line, but also has extremely strong bottom line. We have very strong EBITDA. So we have a lot of optionality, whether it be stay the course, continue to do a roll-up of the industry, continue to grow, find strategic other transactions, assets that we can acquire that are accretive to our ecosystem, and stay the course, or do another private equity transaction, or go public. I mean, it's really all of the above, right? And timing matters, right? We don't choose some of these things for ourselves. Timing is important. So, but what I can tell you is, we know a lot of our competitors, really don't have a lot of optionality, right? They may have built a business as a top line revenue business, but not delivering on EBITDA. And that has changed over the last 12 months. Well, we really do have both. So we're in a great position.
And I'd like to take a different cut of the question, but respond to it less, what are we going to do, but how is it that the world is changing for our customers, and how that's going to drive some of the decisions we make? Like, for example, I kind of look, there are 6 big things happening to smaller businesses. Again, we talk about 2 to 2,000. You mentioned it just a few moments ago, George. You could have a 25-person company that has different individuals living in 15 countries, for crying out loud. One of our customers just had an employee who's in Israel, one who's in India, and several in Europe. I don't know where in Europe they were. And that was like a 25, 30 person company. So you got a globally distributed staff. There is huge cost pressure on everyone right now. There's labor cost pressures, we all know. There's inflation. There's all sorts of cost pressures. And we don't see them going away. We lived for 2 decades in historically low interest rates. I think those days might be over. You're seeing a lot more on-sourcing because perhaps using China as the manufacturer of the world is going to be changing. States and local governments and the federal government seem to find no end in their ability to change compliance and regulation. The relationship, and we've all been talking about this the last couple of years, the relationship between the employee and the employer, it's changing. It's not necessarily bad. Some of it are not positive, some are positive, but it's definitely eroding some trust in the new model a little bit. And I think, it's really hard to rebuild that trust. And I think, what we're doing together here at Prism and Vensure has some capability to help address those trust issues. The last 2 points, employees expect to be able to operate with speed and with ease. And they expect to do what they want to do anywhere in the world they are, anytime they want to do it, and with any tool they want to do it on. That's really hard, particularly for small businesses. And I think we help bring that together. And then the last thing, and I don't say we have all the answers to these, no one does, but there's a complicated paradox going on. Everyone talks about burnout. There are too many emails, too many texts, too many Slacks, too many chats, too many Zoom calls. Everybody's burned out. At the same time, if you poll almost any company and the employees, they say there are gaps of knowledge. So there's a lot of information and yet not enough knowledge. So using systems and technologies and methodologies to reduce the burden on communication and yet get more relevant information into the hands of the employees where they need it and when they need it is super important. And I think what, as an industry, we're doing can impact that in very important ways.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of the biggest takeaways there for me is that, you talked about all of those concepts. I could easily be having that conversation with someone who has customers only in the large enterprise. And everything we said, right, the late 80s, 90s about the world was changing, how talent was going to change everything, how technology, how data was going to change everything. It has, and it's changing it for the SMB as much as the large enterprise. It's really cool to hear you talk about those concepts. So just 1 or 2 final questions. I'm curious, given the economic climate, how for SMB and middle market companies, what kind of impact do you expect the economy to have, on the PEO model through this uncertainty, or any at all?
Yeah, I actually think, one of the things that we saw during the 2000-day, decline is that, PEOs weathered that extremely well. I tell my partners that what you'll see the average WSC go down per client, but you'll see us grow the number of clients, right? More people will be looking for outsourcing. More people will have to diversify. I think also one other thing with our BPaaS, our business process as a service, we deliver tremendous capabilities there, both seats and technology. But one of the things that we saw is that the pandemic normalized the remote nature of employees. And because the pandemic normalized that, right? Like, I'm an old-fashioned guy, right? I want everybody in the office. And well, come late March, I had no choice, right? Everybody had to go home. So I think it's kind of normalized that. And I think employers are going to look for ways to outsource more and to reduce costs. So I think that we're uniquely positioned as an industry. By no means are we, completely, let's say, recession-proof, but I think we're extremely recession resilient. And that's what I see coming for the next. And from the SMB and our clients' point of view, they're going to need help. And I think we're uniquely positioned to help them reduce their costs and to operate at a better margin than they would otherwise be able to do on their own.
Yeah, and I would say Alex's data is accurate. We saw it across, 300 PEOs and ASOs, both in 08, 09, and also during COVID. We actually grew 6% during COVID.
Wow.
Which was even a surprise to me. But I'll also point out the obvious. Everything that you can outsource, when there's uncertainty, the more you can outsource, the more you do. And I think whether you're big or small, you tend to do that because it variabilizes your costs a little bit more and takes some risk out of the equation. So I think it'll just drive the business. And the other thing that'll drive, we talked about it before, but there'll be an increased use, excuse me, of contingent workforces and outsourcing and BPO and all these things. So all the models, and more importantly, the ability to move in between models relatively without friction.
Yeah.
So
yeah, great
That's-
points. So this is the easiest question today. What's the best place to go to learn more about each of the entities or the deal or any of it?
well,
Yeah,
from-
so
go ahead, Alex.
No, Vensure.com is our website, right? That's where clients can go. I think for Prism, Gary, you can give them the website for Prism, and or they can reach out to us by email, either at info@vensure.com or myself at alex.campos@vensure.com. Either of those would be perfect.
And similarly, PrismHR.com. I'm Gary Noke at PrismHR.com. I take smoke signals; those work. The only thing I don't take is TikTok.
All right. All right. Well, I really enjoyed this. Any one of these points that we covered, we could have dug in for an hour each, but thanks for moving quickly with me and for being here. I know you're both really busy, and congratulations on the merger. Makes a lot of sense to me. But thanks again.
Thank you, George.
Thank you, George. Appreciate it.
And thanks everybody for listening or watching.